The 18 Strong Podcast, episode 113 with Pam Owens from Pam Owens Fitness.
So when you put force in a joint, which is attached to the muscle, you're speaking a language to the cells that you want to have control of that range.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where this week we are talking with Pam Owens from Pam Owens Fitness and also the fitness director of Royal Oaks Country Club in Houston, Texas. And there's not really another way to say it other than Pam is kind of a legend in the world of golf fitness. She's a recognized industry leader in results-based fitness training and nutrition coaching. And Pam holds multiple certifications in both of these specialties, including Titleist Performance Institute, Precision Nutrition, FMS, and what we're going to talk about a lot today, the functional range conditioning and even Kinstretch, which is kind of a class-based teaching model on the functional range conditioning. So if you listen to episode 106 with Dr. Andrea Ospina, that's his model and his methodologies. And so Pam is kind of an expert and has become an expert in teaching this not only to individual clients, but also on a group platform. Pam has also published more than 80 magazine articles since 2007 in the fitness industry and is a very frequent contributor for the Titleist Performance Institute for their website, their videos. So recently I got to catch up with Pam when I was in New Orleans at the World Golf Fitness Summit, and we hung out for pretty much almost a half a day, and we were chatting about, some of the posts that she's made on Facebook, and I know that she had been really working a lot on this stuff with her clients. And so what I was really impressed with, though, was when I saw her performing some of these movements that to me looked impossible for me to do, and to think that I could possibly get some of my clients to be able to do some of this stuff. And so Pam has said that this whole functional range conditioning methodology has really not only changed her body and the way that she can move and control movements and how strong she is, but also what she does with her clients and the results that she's been seeing with her clients. So I wanted to not only just kind of pick her brain about that, but share some of these results with you guys and some of the concepts that we didn't get to chat with Dr. Spina about and dig a little bit deeper into this whole functional range conditioning, and then also what the class-based form is, this Kinstretch that Pam has been working with a lot of students, both online and in person. One thing that I noticed that we didn't cover, we started talking about a couple of the different terms. CARs and pails and rails are a couple of the things that you're going to hear, some of the acronyms that you'll hear in the functional range conditioning dialogue, but we didn't actually tell you what pails and rails were. So just to clarify, pails is progressive angular isometric load, and rails are regressive angular isometric load. So you might want to write that down. Progressive angular isometric load are the pails, and the rails are regressive active isometric load. Just wanted to make sure that you got that. All right, before we jump into the interview, I just want to say quick thanks to the guys over at Rad Roller for being such huge supporters of the 18 Strong Podcast and for providing us and our audience with some of the best myofascial tools that are out on the market. There's so much talk about foam rolling and not foam rolling and doing different soft tissue work and trigger points and everything. And I think it's very important that you find the tools that work for you. Speaking of all this functional range and movement that we're talking about with Pam, it's very important that your muscles are working properly. You're able to kind of, get the right tools to help your body move if you have an area that's stuck or muscles that need work, to find the right tools. And, every time I talk with Curtis and Nick from Rad Roller, they're constantly telling me about different ways that these tools have been designed specifically for the different purposes of hitting different body parts and finding, ways to get to the tough to reach areas. So if you haven't checked out the Rad Roller products, just go to radroller.com and you can search all over. Be sure to use the code 18STRONG. You're going to get a sweet discount on any products that you order there. So by all means, go check out radroller.com. All right, let's get into our interview with, as I mentioned, the legend in the world of golf and fitness, Pam Owens. Pam Owens, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm so excited to finally have you on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here.
It was such a pleasure getting to meet you and hang out. We went and had lunch with Dr. Brett McCabe at the World Golf Fitness Summit in New Orleans, and you guys helped me guide my way through my New Orleans meal to make sure I got all the right goodies on my plate. And it was
absolutely
so much fun to just kind of chat with you. And I know we've connected via social media, and especially with the work that you're doing in golf and fitness, and in relation to what we're going to talk about today a lot is the kin stretch and the functional range conditioning stuff. But, it was a while back. I forget what the post was, what the thread was, but you were mentioned in something. And I remember very clearly Lance Gill replied with Pam Owens equals legend. And I just remember that. And I'm like, I'm going to make a note of that.
Wow,
and Pam is coming on the show soon.
That's nice.
So
I think I've been around a long time is the flip side of that. And I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of trends, that's for sure. And I have filtered through a lot of techniques and varieties, and I think I use a lot of tools, but I just really am excited about this tool and this technique that I'm using most recently, which is the functional range conditioning.
Well, that's what has really struck me is, I'm not sure when you went to your first course, and we'll get into some of that stuff, but the emphasis that you've really put on in your post online, but also just in our conversations with how much some of this has changed the way that you're working, not just with your clients, but even you personally, on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Doing your cars and your movements and kind of regaining your own athleticism as well as regaining the athleticism of your clients. So I want to save some of that a little bit for down the road here. Let's first give the audience a little background just on Pam Owens and your history in the world of golf fitness, because truly you have seen and worked with a lot of people. You're down in Houston at the Royal Oaks Country Club. And so give us a little idea of where this all started, where your journey started, and what kind of brought you to where you are.
You bet. I actually was influenced by a golf pro here in Houston, Kevin Kirk. He was forward-thinking in the golf fitness realm as far as helping his golfers. He requires that they all look at their bodies and get fit in order to help them. So a guy went to him named Mark Harvey and said, I want to go on this journey and get better at golf. That was in 2002, and then Kevin said, you need to get fit because your body cannot do what I want you to do in the swing. So Mark came to me, and then I communicated with Kevin back and forth through our client and met him a couple of times, and that kind of started the journey back in 2002. And so as soon as TPI came out, Kevin got certified, and then I got certified in early 2007. So this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So the Titleist Performance Institute really has molded this whole career for me, starting back in 2007, and that's kind of where I started. But since then, I've just continued to try to find the best, read the best articles I could read, study from the best people, get certifications that I feel really impact the golf performance and impact a person's body and impact their health. And I really didn't have much of a golf background personally. I was a ballerina, and so I certainly had mobility, balance, and strength, and was able to produce power through jumping and several other things that ballerinas can do. And when I picked up a golf club, it came pretty natural. So I don't coach people from my golf background, but I coach them from really my fitness and performance knowledge background, and just try to use the good tools that I've been able to acquire along the road.
So prior to 2007, or really, I guess, prior to 2002, when you started working with Kevin a little bit, what was your, were you working in the fitness industry? Were you a therapist, a fitness pro? What was your main source of working with clients at that point?
Well, I was just more general fitness. I was an aerobics instructor, so I taught group exercise and absolutely loved the energy of that. So I started with teaching groups and then got the personal training certification, started working with individuals and small groups. So teaching groups is fun. It's something very natural to me. And managing a group, it's crowd control, it's keeping the energy alive. And so just going to flip forward here to Kin Stretch, which Kin Stretch is actually the group format for functional range conditioning. So when I took functional range conditioning in June of 2015, he said, Kin Stretch is coming, and it's a group format. And I said, oh, I'm an old Group X instructor. I can do that, So I kept that information in my back pocket. As soon as it came out, I signed up for the first seminar that was taught, and that was at Nike World headquarters this past February in 2016. And I attended that and loved it, absolutely loved it. So it's the way to manage FRC in a group format. And so it's got flow, it crescendos in the middle of the class, just that whole way of managing groups. I'm able to apply that background of over 20 years of teaching groups to a personal training setting. So it's really fun for me.
Yeah, I would imagine that was just right up your alley, and you're able to just kind of jump right in. And what's interesting to me, and we'll get into some more of the details of FRC itself. And for anyone that doesn't know the functional range conditioning, we had Dr. Andrea Ospina on the show in episode number 106, and we talked a lot about the basics of the whole, functional anatomy seminars is his company. And we talked about some of the fundamentals there, but didn't get a chance to dig in as much as I would have liked, just because of time constraints. And I thought this was a perfect way to follow up on the interview with Dr. Spina. But because he talked a lot about how so much of FRC is individualized and working specifically with the individual on, whatever their limitations are. And so I'm very intrigued on how the class setting addresses that. But then also just as a practitioner, I'm very excited to, possibly see the possibilities of what can be done in the local golf communities and working with different golfers on a more local basis. But backtracking again a little bit, because I know you've got some other great certifications that you utilize a lot, and Precision Nutrition is one of the really role models that we use here as far as our nutritional principles, even reference them in the Golfer's Guide to a Bogey-Proof Workout book that I put together. And I just love what Dr. Berardi has done with them. What has that certification, because you have the coaching certification, what has that done for you and your clients as well?
Well, I tell you personally, it changed me from the inside out. I mean, not only my nutrition, but my mindset, my relationships have all changed. I just can't say enough about that. That's changed my life as far as pivotal moments. Precision Nutrition Level 1 and 2 have really impacted my life in the way I approach my conversations, my listening, understanding where people are coming from, what they need, how we need to reduce things down to the more simplistic terms and keep it simple, sweetie. I don't want to say stupid, but keep it simple, sweetie. I'm from the South, so let's go.
G-rated. Got to keep it G-rated here.
Keep it simple, darling, whatever. But and it really addresses working on one thing at a time, focusing on one thing at a time, changing your habits. It's a habit-based program, and it's a results-based program that's customized. So you see what works. So I've applied everything I learned in Precision Nutrition to the way I train people as well. So like I say, it's changed me personally.
Well, that's what I've gotten from so much of Dr. Berardi stuff. Precision Nutrition, who was started and founded by Dr. John Berardi, obviously is just the coaching aspect of really everything. He ties it into, personal trainers and therapists. I mean, we can all utilize these principles. And if any of you haven't heard of Precision Nutrition, go immediately after listening to this podcast, go to precisionnutrition.com. That's one of the nutritional information packets that I purchased years ago and the most impactful one that I've ever come across. And it's because it's not like an extreme. It's not a fad diet. It's not a low carb, high protein, or vice versa. It's just great, solid principles to live by. If the population of America just followed those 80% of the time, we would be way better off.
Yeah.
Just again, physically, mentally, relationship wise, as you mentioned. So I know that this is kind of off topic, but for some of the folks that are out there, maybe struggling with a little bit of diet related things, being a precision nutrition coach, what's one or two things that you would have them start at least thinking about? You mentioned it's a very, simple step approach. What are the first couple of things that you would address with a client?
I think just taking action. One of the first things I think, you can read and research and ruminate over the past and what you've done or where you are. But I think people feel so much better when they just take one action. Is that what can I do today that's going to set me on a better trajectory for the future? And that may be I'm going to plan my next 24 hours of meals. Just planning your meals and execute that. So I guess the action could be anything. It could be I'm going to take a walk and think. I'm going to make that phone call to someone that I need help, to tell them I need help. Or I'm going to make a meal. I'm going to try to cook one meal. I'm going to cook dinner tonight. So I guess my first thing to say would be take action. Just do something. Just set yourself going in the right trajectory.
Excellent. I love that. Okay, let's kind of shift over to our big topic today, and that's talking about the kin stretch and functional range conditioning. So if you could, let's just go with talking about a few of the basic principles of what the heck is all this. I'm in the fitness world, and that's kind of the stuff I pay attention to online. And most of the listeners here, there's a lot of fitness pros listening, but most are golfers and maybe haven't come across Dr. Spina's interview that we did or some of his Instagram posts. But it's very unique looking things when you look at the videos.
Yeah.
But what is some of the basic premise behind these movements and the philosophy of functional anatomy seminars?
Oh, well, I'll just start. It's a mobility development program. So mobility development is comprised of a lot of things, but it improves the quality of your movement. It gives you better body control. It gives you better range of movement, which is mobility. It gives you strength in the end ranges, and I'll explain that later when we talk in detail about that. And it also helps you prevent injuries because it gives you more control in all ranges of motion. So it's very fascinating, and it's something that you feel. Looking at the posts, it looks like people are just stretching or doing some kind of extreme movement. You can't quite tell just by looking at the post, but when you're actually doing the procedure or doing the exercise and putting the emphasis and the force in a certain place and moving in a certain way and doing the several steps it takes to get in the right position and then add force to it, then you really feel what it's doing, and people are blown away at how quickly they improve. So it's a mobility development program that I want everyone to experience because it gives you such great, fantastic results.
Well, when we were at the World Golf Fitness Summit, you and I, we were chatting and we decided, let's scoot the table out of the way. We were going to do a little sit down interview and it was, we were chatting. You're like, well, I need you to feel this. So we just kind of scooted the table out and we recorded it. So I'll put that recording up on the show notes page so people can kind of see you working me over a little bit there. But I have to say that, I've watched and read up on some of the different movements and have done some of the different movements and have even had clients starting to do some of these. But when I had you really emphasize where I needed to be pressing, where I needed my force and my focus. It was a much different exercise than I was doing, just based on looking at the posts and watching videos and learning from, online resources. But when you actually had me in certain positions and you were telling me, okay, press your knee in here, focus on this, get your chest up, it was much, much different. And so we'll definitely have that available for people to see just some of the things that you were working through. So what is it about these positions that is different from just regular stretching? Because typically people, especially golfers, come in, they say, I need more flexibility, I need to rotate more. But how is this different?
Right. It's different because it's more active stretching versus passive stretching. So I've been stretching people's hamstrings for years, and I know many of the listeners, I'm sure, it's like, how can I get my hamstrings longer? Do I need surgery? When are they going to develop that surgery to lengthen the hamstrings? And I apologize to everyone I've worked with for years that we've gotten minimal results. So I'm so excited about this technique because we are getting longer, lengthened, and we're getting control in the hamstrings. So what is it that makes the difference? The passive stretching versus active stretching. So passive stretching is where something is helping you stretch. Either the floor or you've got your leg on something and you're using body weight to push into a stretch. Active stretching is where you are controlling the stretch with your muscles in that range that you're in. Let me give you an example. Let's say you put your leg up on the table. So you're standing up and you put one leg up on the table and you're stretching your hamstring. So that's a very common way that we do that, and I've told people to do that forever. And that feels good. You get a bit of an analgesic effect. You get a stretch. You get a warming effect in that area. You do get warmed up. But are you lengthening the joint tissue, the range of motion or the tissue there? Not really. You're not lengthening it. But the FRC method would have you focus on all areas of that joint in an isometric contraction. That would be one way. That's my simple way of describing it. It's a little more complex than that. But so one way to lengthen that is to get to the furthest point of that hamstring stretch and then push your leg down into the table. So you've contracted the joint. You've actually contracted the hamstring at the angle that it's up on the table. And then you lift the leg off. That would be a passive range lift off. So you lift the leg off and you would strengthen the top part of the joint or the hip flexor. And that would create a change in that joint. So that's a very simple way of saying it. So that's different than a passive stretch where you just use your body mass to stretch. You're actually activating that joint and the muscle that's all tied together with an isometric contraction. And the reason that creates change is because of a lot of things, but one of the main reasons is cells in your joint speak the language of force. So just like when you contract with resistance, you're putting force on a muscle and creating muscle. So when you put force in a joint, which is attached to the muscle, you're speaking a language to the cells that you want to have control of that range. So you've given a message to your cells and to that joint, I want control here. I want control at this 90-degree range or whatever it is. And you start to build control there. And that is one of the main principles behind FRC, and that's how it is actually creating change in a person's mobility. So we can get about 10 to 15 degrees change is a very common range of increase in mobility in a joint for an exercise like that.
What was that quote that you said? Cells in your muscles speak the language of force?
Cells speak the language of force.
There's that.
From my understanding, now Dr. Andreas Phoenix is the guru of this, and I'm just a lowly personal trainer who knows how to teach it, but So he knows the research, and he kind of read what science said about how we've been doing this before and how it doesn't work. And he's read what science says. He said, I'm going to create a system that's based on science, what the research says. And he said, cells need force. That's how they change, and that's how they grow. So we're constantly regenerating our cells. You cut yourself, your skin, a few days, you've regenerated and renewed your skin. That happens in the joint too. So if we're constantly regenerating bone, skin, the ligaments, tendons, all the different time ranges. So like our bones take 7 to 10 years to completely regenerate. Joints more frequently. I don't really know exactly how long, but every day that we're not using a range in our joint, then the cells that are responsible, or the fibroblasts that are responsible for the force in that direction, say, oh, you don't need me, and so they don't regenerate. But when you go there or you put force in a range, then the cells are getting the message, I need to use, hey, we need to use this range. I need to regenerate here. So that takes me back to CARS, which is the controlled articular rotations. That's the daily program that we teach. You're telling your cells every day in those ranges that you want it to stay alive and regenerate and be used. So that creates usable mobility in all those ranges in every direction. So that's why CARS is so important to do daily, because you're giving a message to your joints to stay alive, to keep it up, and to keep giving you control in those areas.
I think that's a real important. I think that's a great important point to really focus on, is that every day we don't use part of our range of motion, we're teaching our body that we don't necessarily need it. So if you think about how often we're in a car, we're at a desk, and we were talking. Yes. I forget, and maybe it was Dr. Brett McCabe that we were talking to, in fact, and we were just looking at just shoulder range of motion, and you made this point exactly, and you said, well, if you think about it, how often does somebody reach backwards with their arm into that full range? And it's not very often. So why would their body keep that range? Our bodies tend to want to be as efficient as possible. So if I don't need that range, why would it continue to use it? Why put
energy there? Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't put any energy where you don't need it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I just want to recap on the little hamstring drill kind of that you were doing, because I've done this recently with some clients, and it's interesting to watch when. So if you're standing and you put your foot up, let's say on a chair or a table or whatever, and speaking to the listener here, you'll feel that stretch in the hamstring, and everybody's done that stretch. You do you bend forward, you feel the stretch in your hamstrings, but then doing that active isometric pressure into that box to kind of kick that on, but then the look on people's faces when they go to lift that leg up. And you keep your legs straight, and all of a sudden you start cramping in your thigh, and you start thinking, whoa, there is no way this is good for me. But as you mentioned, that's muscle confusion there. That's your body learning to improve.
Right. That's neurological confusion. So a cramp in a muscle in that situation is that's your body saying, I don't like it here. This is new for me. I'm not good here. I don't have control here. But just go with it. Go with it, and it will get better. So that's the body learning to use that new range. It's gaining strength. So I've totally changed what I do with cramping now. So cramping is okay in my training sessions now, where it used to be something we would avoid. But in this instance, when we're doing FRC, the cramping is good.
Yeah, when you get somebody down on the floor and you have them get in a bridge position or something, they get that. It's almost like a gunshot. Their hamstring fires up and starts cramping, and they stop, and immediately it's like, oh, I got to stretch. Yeah. But now, after talking to you about that, you're like, no, let them go with it. Let them experience that, and because you're never going to get through it if you don't experience that. And and reduce
to
that
keep
confusion.
avoiding it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. It needs to be cramping in the right area. So I'll put that little caveat in there, cramping in the area that you're intensifying. So
right, that's a great point. That's a great point. Can you?
Yeah.
So
but see what? Like, let's go back to the hamstring illustration because if you don't mind, this is what I do see is. So let's say you lift it and you do have that cramp in the quad, the high part of the quad, right in the hip flexor area. That's where we would want the cramp, somewhere there when you're lifting the leg. But what we will typically see is we'll see like the leg will bend, the supporting leg will bend, the pelvis will lift up or hike up, the body will cave over to the side. Those kind of things will happen, and that's evidence of the lack of independent joint control too, which that's why we go back to CARS and CARS, the daily mobility program, because that's where you're learning independent joint control, which is another huge principle that we've all known, but we don't practice it as much. But independent joint control precedes a complex movement. So if you think that if you're stuck in your golf swing and you can't get better and you just can't seem to get that sequence right or whatever, wherever you might be stuck, it may be that you're lacking independent joint control somewhere, and that's contributing that, but you can't find it. You can't figure it out until you actually stop and assess the joint control. And CARS is also a way to identify your deficiencies, because you are taking your joints through range of motion in multiple directions in every way you can think of, to assess yourself daily and see, wow, how's this working? Can I rotate my arm? Can I rotate my pelvis without my shoulders moving, or my torso moving? And if you go through those joint motions daily and assess that and gain independent control, which helps you build a complex, more difficult neurological movement. So one of the results we're seeing with people doing FRC and CARS daily is they're able to all of a sudden do difficult things. And I told you that when I saw you, I said, all of a sudden I was able to do a Cossack squat and a pistol squat. Now, did I ever practice those things? Not really. I never did really practice it. I just got up from the floor one day and could do it after I'd been, doing this for several months. So, that's exciting. And then I'm hearing the same thing with the golfers I'm working with that are saying all of a sudden my posture is different and I'm staying in balance and I'm feeling that sequencing and I've gotten more yardage. I'm seeing more control. It's really exciting.
I was fascinated when, first of all, when you were showing me the pistol squat and just, some of the movements. And I literally, as we're standing there, I'm like, Dr. McCabe, you got to come over here and see this. Watch what Pam can do. And you told me, you're like, it's not, most people, if they can't squat, they practice squatting. But
exactly,
I didn't work on practicing the pistol squat. It was, I gained control over these movements, and those individual pieces then created this larger sum.
Difficult move, exactly.
And so
I'm I'll tell you
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and with the pistol squat, for example, I think one of the key things for me was I have very flexible ankles, and the old ballerina in me, that would be natural, and I just after working on my toes and my ankles and getting all that very strong, I think that was one of the most pivotal things in being able to get down and get up in those positions. And so I'm just throwing that out there because sometimes it's something unknown that you wouldn't ever think of. You think, my hips aren't strong enough. I'm going to do more deadlifts. I'm going to do more. Those are all great. I'm not knocking that. That's exactly what you do want to do. I do that with people too. But we also are assessing every single joint, the toes, the ankles, can they move in every direction? You have a limitation somewhere, I guarantee it's showing up somewhere in a compound movement as a compensation. And so you just want to eliminate all those little deficiencies you may have by getting that independent joint control, and that will just lead to a much more quality in all your movements, no matter what it is: golf, life, squats, whatever you do in the gym, yoga. Your down dog will be better. All that.
So you've mentioned several times that this is kind of a daily practice. Do you have a normal routine or a typical routine that you have all of your clients do, or is it completely individualized for each different person, or how does that work, and how long does it take?
Oh, good question. I do recommend that everyone do controlled articular rotations daily, and that can be as short as 10 minutes, but 15 to 20 if you have the time. And that's where you take your joints, like I mentioned before, through every range of motion about 2 or 3 times, very slowly, and adding force in every line that you can. And so I have kind of a routine they all know to do, and we start off with that. Some do it before they meet with me, and then sometimes, most of us, we do it as we're there, because I'll just keep making it harder and harder as they need it. But yeah, that's about a 15 to 20 minute routine. It's called CARS, and it's done daily. And then after that, I'll do whatever it is specifically we need to work on to improve. And most of the time, it's shoulders, hips, and spine. So I'll just throw that out there. That's where most of our time is spent, with shoulders, hips, and spine, or gaining some kind of speed or sequence, or just overall strength, or tying something together. So.
And then there's 2 other terms that anyone that's seen any of the FRC stuff that we continuously see come up: PAILS and rails. So PAILS is PAILS, and then rails, RAILS. Can you explain the difference between those?
That is where we actually, like the example I gave with you with the foot on the table, the PAILS would be the pushing down, and rails would be pushing up, but usually we'll put a force against it as it pushes up. So, and that is, you get in the end range of your range of motion, and then you're going to try to gain strength in that end range. And so PAILS and rails is an exercise technique or a method that we use to gain control in the end range. So if you think about it, we are strongest in our mid-ranges. So if you're going to carry, let's think of the biceps and the arms. If you're going to lift a 150, 200-pound box, you would probably bend your elbows at about a 90-degree angle to hold it. You wouldn't hold your arms out straight in front of you to hold a heavy box. Right? You'd bend your elbows. So because that's the mid-range of the bicep muscle, that's where you're the strongest. Everyone is. It's the end ranges where we're weakest. So if you straighten your elbow all the way to try to lift something heavy, that would be very difficult. And then bending your elbow completely all the way, we're weak in that range too, which that's, by the way, is where we cramp mostly, in the real short ranges. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said cramping in those situations are good, because you're strengthening the short range of the muscle, like the hamstring when the knees curled up and the hips extended. So PAILS and rails is working in the end ranges. So that's a technique that we use. So you'll see that a lot in social media. Some of the videos, you'll see people doing PAILS and rails.
So when you're implementing this stuff with someone in their training program, obviously we know the CARS are more of a daily routine, and you can do those on your own, 10, 20 minutes. And of course, you can do the PAILS and rails on your own too. But let's say you have a client that comes in. Do you do this type of work at the beginning of a session? Do you do it throughout the session? Do you wait till the end? When's the most optimal time, as far as if you're going to be lifting or you're going to be doing some circuit stuff? When do you like to throw this stuff in there?
Well, you can do it at different intensity levels. So CARS is daily at the beginning. And then when you're doing, like when I teach a Kin stretch class, where we're just totally going as heavy as as intense as you can, doing multiple areas of the body. That is a strength day. I mean, you just don't, I wouldn't do power and strength that day. Just consider that one of your strength days.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not your grandma's stretching program, as I was posting recently. And I will tell you, speaking of that, the Cubs, who won the World Series, if you look at some of those guys, the positions they get in, they're almost in the splits catching a ball, trying to tag someone out, right?
Yep.
That's an in-range position. So your body has a stretch governor that's not going to let you get in a position you can't control. It will restrict you back from where you safely can go, called the stretch governor or stretch reflex. And that's controlled by the central nervous system. And so, just visualize those baseball players going all out into almost the splits to catch some of those. They've been there before. That's not a new thing. They work on that. And I'm throwing the Cubs name out there because their trainers, staff, their medical staff and training staff is certified through this method, through this FRC and functional release, which is the medical version of this.
Very interesting.
So I think that's cool to see.
So let's talk a little bit more about the class now, the Kin Stretch class. So you've been doing this now, and you do this with what size are the groups? Have you done this with very large groups? Is it small groups? What does that look like?
I do it with both, any size. The largest stuff has in 20-something people. That's probably big enough. But yeah, you're doing it all together. Of course, anytime you have a group, you can't customize it. But the human, all humans are pretty similar. We all have mobility issues. Even us wonderful instructors who do this daily, we all find that we have issues, right, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. You saw a lot of mine.
No. Oh no, you're good. You're good. But so yeah, I just do what's typical for most people. And if you are really mobile, let's say, oh, I'm really mobile, I don't need this. Well, everybody needs it. Even the hypermobile people need this because hypermobile, they have a lot of passive flexibility or range of motion, but most of them don't have a lot of control in those end ranges, and they end up with a lot of injuries. I have two people that are very hypermobile that I work with, two different men, in fact, and both of them have a lot of injuries and have had a lot of injuries over their lifetime. And so they have both said that doing this program, one of them has said that his wife can say he doesn't even walk the same anymore. He's so much more stable looking, and it's helped his golf game. It's helped his speed. It's helped him stay more intact in his swing and tighter in his swing and more efficient. But anyway, I kind of got off tangent there, but.
No, that's very interesting to me because I've got a young client, 14, maybe 15 years old now, and he suffers from a diagnosis of EDS, which is hypermobility, and that's exactly the issue with him, and that's why I'm very intrigued with this, and I'm very excited to go visit with Dr. Spina in a couple of weeks here to go through the FRC course because, when somebody has that much hypermobility, they are very prone to dislocations and muscle tears and things like that because their body basically currently doesn't know where that real end range is. And if they put themselves at risk, they are much more likely to lose that control. So I'm going to have to pick your brain on a little bit of that just regarding some treatment.
And so in this, we're just trying to increase the capacity or to increase the ability to generate force in the full range, not just the mid-range where we're strongest. So increasing capacity of anything, of any range, is going to lessen your likelihood to be injured there, right? So, that's why it's so good for preventing injuries because it gives you an out. You have control. Let's say you roll your ankle Well, you've been rolling your ankle intentionally and strengthening that range every day if you're doing cars. So when you accidentally perhaps roll your ankle, your body knows what to do there. It's strong. You've got strong ligaments there. You're less likely to have pain.
I actually saw a video on Instagram that Dr. Spina reposted, and it was a guy doing exactly that, rolling over onto his ankle, onto the side. And I've rolled my ankle so many times playing soccer that I literally almost got sick to my stomach watching it, thinking of what that would feel like if that was my ankle. But sounds like it's probably exactly what I need to work into in order to control
Probably
that
so.
and not have that fear. And I guarantee that shows up in my golf swing. It's my left ankle that I am really susceptible to. And, I imagine the pivot on that front side. So speaking of the golfer, this is obviously beneficial for everyone. It's beneficial for the golfers. Where does the golfer start? If they have they haven't seen any of this stuff yet, where do they first go to maybe learn a little bit more, or just to start, as you mentioned before, take action off the bat?
I think to learn the daily mobility routine, which is called CARS, I think that is essential for everyone. So everyone can benefit from that, even the Olympic athlete, the professional tour player, to the non-bendy guy who's never been flexible. Everyone can benefit from CARS. So I teach that online, or they come see me here at Royal Oaks Country Club. I teach it here. I do events other places occasionally here and there. But anyway, so I definitely find someone in your town that teaches it, or work with me online, or come visit me if you're in this area. But that's a program that's easy to learn, I think, over time, and then it's something you can do anywhere. It doesn't require equipment or anything.
Yeah, that's what's so intriguing, is that you can do this. And again, as he mentioned, you got to make it like brushing your teeth too. You have to make this part of your habit, or as you said, if you don't use that range, you're going to lose that range. So implementing that. So we'll definitely have a link to be able to get in touch with you, and some resources in the show notes where people can go and look and kind of learn a little bit more about it. All right, Pam, to wrap things up, I have a couple questions that I like to ask every guest that comes on the show. So I have to ask you first, are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
Oh, I'm a Happy Gilmore fan, and you know why?
Why is
because
that?
I actually do the Happy Gilmore move with my clients, so I have to vote for that one.
Nice.
Because we do it for speed training. Yeah.
Nice. I like it. I have to say, I was expecting you to be a Caddyshack, a little more old school, but Happy Gilmore. That's a great answer. All right. So if you had a chance to play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, past, present, future, doesn't have to be necessarily someone in the world of golf, who would it be? Where would you play? And maybe why did you pick that person?
Oh, it'd be my grandfather, because he was the only golfer in my family, and I was young when he passed away, and he played out all the time, every day that he could, every weekend, and so I would definitely pick him, and it'd be in Beaumont at some public course, which is where he played. I'm not sure where he played, but I just, have fond memories of that, and I think that would be really nice to do.
That's fantastic. All right, what would you say is your mission moving forward on this whole journey of FRC, Kinstretch, and everything you have going with Pam Owens Fitness?
Well, my journey and what I'm so excited about is just kind of busting up in the ceiling here on this online training and this group program. I'm able to help more people in a shorter amount of time. So that's what's exciting to me, is I'm able to help more people, and I can do it online or in person, and it gets results. That's just huge. It's giving so many results to people, and I'm also using it with kids. And here we're starting a new junior big program here in January. I've done it with kids before and teenagers, and so I think when we start them young, they'll have a lot more body control and ability to get stronger, faster, and play a whole lot better golf.
Oh man, I wish I would have started this stuff, when I was an early teen. It would have been just so amazing. You think of all the injuries that we've all had, the back pain, and now as we screen all of these golfers looking at their hips and shoulders and everything, and how so many things don't move right. If we had built that routine of daily preparation of our body, man, I feel like we would be in such a different position.
We would. I mean, these are the prerequisites for human movement. Is your joints should be able to move this way. So when we build these prerequisites, then, wonderful things can happen.
Well, Pam, I have to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show. It was a true pleasure to sit and chat and get to hang out with you for quite a bit at the World Golf Fitness Summit. And I'm glad we finally took the opportunity to get you on the podcast and keep spreading the information and the great work that you're doing with Kinstretch and everything you've done. Really appreciate it. And you are a true pioneer in the world of golf fitness. And, you're one of those that have kind of led the pack for guys like me and a lot of the other folks that were at that World Golf Fitness Summit. So thank you once again. Let the audience know where they can go to find you, online or get in touch with your online training. As I mentioned, we'll have it on the show notes too.
Oh, you bet. My website is PamOwensFitness.com. And I always post my events and programs that I do here at the club at Royal Oaks or other places. And then got my nutrition coaching page that's got a lot of information. And that's definitely a program that can help everyone. And just reach out to me there. I'd love to hear from you and would love to talk to you and see how I can help you or refer you to someone in your area that can help you with whatever goals you have in nutrition or fitness.
I love it. Thanks again, Pam, and we'll be talking very soon.
You bet. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks for joining us today on the 18 Strong podcast. I hope you got a lot of information out of Pam's interview, specifically talking about the importance of moving on a daily basis and the fact that if you don't use these different ranges of motion and your joints the way that they should be on a consistent basis, that you end up losing a lot of that functionality. And then eventually, most likely, you're going to have to work very, very hard to get that back. So most of us are kind of behind the curve. We didn't start this stuff young. Like Pam and I discussed, it would have been great to be youngsters doing this stuff on a regular basis, almost like brushing your teeth. But most of us are kind of fighting to catch up. So first of all, you got to start getting in your cars. You got to start getting in your ranges of motion and working on these things to continue to improve. And if you don't know where to start, by all means, reach out to us, reach out to Pam, and we'll get you kind of set up and help you figure out where you need to go or how to contact somebody that can maybe direct you in the right way to get moving on this stuff and reclaim some of that motion and functionality back. All right, if you want any more information from this episode, this is episode 113. So just go to 18strong.com. You can search for Pam Owens. You can search for 113, or you can search for functional range. I'm sure you can find it with all of those. All right, I want to say thank you one more time for joining me on the 18 Strong podcast. I'll see you next week with another great guest. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.